Hey guys, here's the homework number 7, part 2 video. So this is that second topic, YJZ, which is parts of a quadratic function. And you're figuring these out from an equation, which means that you're figuring them out numerically with numbers. And so this is information about how to do that. So they're going to ask you to find a few different things. The two important things you need to know are how to find the vertex and how to find the y-intercept. And then once you know how to find the vertex, there are some other things here that you'll be able to find from the points that are listed. So let's look at this. So vertex, first of all, when a quadratic function is written in standard form, it looks like this. So ax squared plus bx plus c, and then it equals 0, which we talked about yesterday. If I'm trying to find the vertex, step 1 is to find negative b over 2a. So the b and a come from this equation here that I highlighted, in green, where I circled it in green here. So I'm putting the middle number, I'm making it negative or opposite of whatever it is, and then putting it over in a fraction over 2 times a. So that number is what goes into the x position. So this is the x coordinate. So this ends up being x. So negative, well, let's not write it that way. Let's write it x. The second step then is to take the number you just got, this x coordinate, and plug it into the original equation. So go back up here to this, what I highlighted in green, and plug x, or I'm sorry, that x coordinate back in, and then solve for whatever's left. And whatever that answer is ends up being the y here of your vertex. So remember, this is the highest or the lowest point of your parabola, just depending on which way it's flipped around. So the other things that this tells you is once you know the vertex is you also know what the axis of symmetry is. And that's the equation x equals whatever this number is. So it's the sum of the questions are going to ask you to find axis of symmetry, and it comes from this number, this x value. Then if you look at the y value, that also gives you information. This is either the minimum or the maximum value, depending again on if it's flipped up or down, which shape the bowl is going. So that gives you information here on how to find the vertex. And then once you have the vertex, how you can take information out of it to find the axis of symmetry or the min and max value. So those are different things that this topic in IXL will ask you to do. The fourth thing that you'll need to know how to do is how to do the y-intercept, which is a little different than the others. Basically, you just need to plug in 0, x for x, and then solve for what y would be. Because really the y-intercept is going to be the 0.0 some number because it's on the y-axis. So you want x to be 0, and then you solve for that. Okay, let's try some examples. So if I'm trying to find the vertex of this, basically step 1 is I'm going to do negative b over 2a. So if I look at this, a equals 1 and b equals negative 2, right? So 1 here is a, and then b is here. So this would end up being negative 2, right? Negative sign in the equation, but also a negative sign on the 2. So both 2 negative signs, and then 2 times a. So negative 2 is positive 2, divided by 2 is 1. So that means my axis of symmetry here, if I was trying to find that, would be x equals 1. But that also means for my vertex that my x coordinate is a 1. So far I know that part. Now step 2 is I need to take this and plug it back into the original equation. So y equals something squared minus 2 something. And I'm going to plug that number in that I just solved for. So I end up with a 1 here and a 1 here, and then I just need to solve. So y equals 1 squared minus 2 times 1, so minus 2 equals negative 1. So this is negative 1. Which also means that this number here represents the max or the min, depending on which direction the parabola is facing, which I know that this one is facing upward because it's positive in the front, but we can talk more about that later. Okay, vertex of this one. So step one. So A is 1, B is 4, C is 13 over 2, which isn't really important, but I'll write it down. Step one, negative B over 2A is negative 4 over 2 times 1, coming from these numbers here. And so that's negative 4 divided by 2, so negative 2. So for my vertex, so far, I know that the x coordinate is negative 2. So step 2 is I'm going to take my original equation and take out the x's and plug in the number I just solved for, which now that 13 over 2 is a little bit more important, right? Because now I have to use that fraction. So negative 2 squared is 4. 4 times negative 2 is negative 8, and then plus 13 over 2. So I have 4 minus 8, so negative 4. And if you're thinking about 13 over 2, that's 6.5, right? So if I'm adding negative 4 plus 13 over 2, that's really like saying negative 8 over 2 plus 13 over 2. So you could think of it as a decimal, but you also, it's asking you to write it as a fraction. So you'll have to go back and do that changing again. So if I'm looking at negative 8 over 2 plus 13 over 2, then I'm saying positive 5 over 2. So my vertex is negative 2 and 5 over 2. All right, this time I only have to find the axis of symmetry, which means I need to find the x coordinate of the vertex. Now I can stop. So really, if I'm thinking about the example I just did, this one, I'm just stopping after I find this first piece. So it's shorter, right? So I'm just going to do negative b over 2a. If I look, I have 1 and 4. So a is 1, b is 4. So negative 4 over 2 times 1. Negative 2. And so my axis of symmetry is the equation x equals negative 2. And you have to write it as an equation. So if you write just the negative 2, it'll be wrong. So you do have to include this x equals part in the front, just so you know. Oh, that's the other one I showed you again. All right, axis of symmetry for this one. So a equals 1, b equals negative 4, c equals 8. And so negative b over 2a is negative 4 over 2 times 1. So this time it's a positive 4 over 2. So I end up with x equals 2 as my equation. So remember, it's always x equals because you're talking about the axis of symmetry, which is the line that symmetrically splits the parabola in half. All right, if I'm trying to find the minimum value, that's where I'm looking for the y coordinate. So that means I do have to do both steps. So negative b over 2a, this one doesn't even have a b, so it means it's 0. Negative 0 over 2 times 1, so 0. So my vertex is 0 something. So now if I plug in 0, 0 squared, that's easy, 0. So my vertex is just at 0, 0. This y coordinate, this is the max minimum point. And so you don't have to write this as an equation. This is just a value. It's a number. So you're just putting in the 0. A equals negative 2, b equals 4. So negative b over 2a. This time would be negative 4 over 2 times negative 2. So negative 4 over negative 4. So this equals 1. And so now if I plug that in, y equals negative 2 times 1 squared plus 4 times 1 minus 4 equals negative 2 times 1. So negative 2 plus 4 minus 4. So that equals negative 2. So this is my max min, which this time this shape, because it's negative in front, is facing down, which means this is going to be a maximum. Just so you know, as a point of reference. Finally, the last two are y-intercepts. So this is pretty easy. You're just plugging in y. Oh, sorry, not y equals 0. You're plugging in x equals 0. So if y is 0 squared minus 6/5, then this is just negative 6/5. Plug in x equals 0 again. This one's really easy. So my y-intercept on that's 0. Okay, I think that's all of the examples I had for you. So good luck. Let me know if you have any questions or if you run into trouble.